Taiki is a virgin nerd but has a crush on the hottest girl of basketball team. One day her parents move overseas, leaving her alone. With no other choice, she has to live with him. Now he's determined to make her fall head over heels for him, so he can clap her as hard as possible. One morning, Taiki rushed to the school gym for badminton practice. But if he was being honest, his real reason was to see his crush, Chinatsu. The moment he walked in, she accidentally smacked him in the face with a basketball. She quickly apologized and gave him a candy bar. Taiki stared at that candy like it was the greatest treasure in the world. Later that day, Taiki told his friend Kiyo that he wanted to marry Chinatsu. Kiyo immediately told him to stop dreaming. After all, Chinatsu was the basketball team's superstar that everyone admired, while Taiki was just an unknown loser with nothing special to his name. The next morning, Taiki saw Chinatsu standing outside the gym. He thought it was the perfect chance to talk to her, but he had no idea how to start a conversation. Then she suddenly sneezed. Without thinking, Taiki offered her his scarf. Then he offered her some tea, his gloves, and even a pocket heater. By the time he finished, he realized he probably looked like the biggest clown of the year. To his surprise, Chinatsu smiled and said she was curious to see what else he had inside his bag. The idiot actually started digging through it. She burst into laughter and admitted she was just teasing him. Still, she thanked him for being so thoughtful. Taiki said it was nothing, but right after that, he sneezed himself. Chinatsu returned his scarf and even helped wrap it around his neck. The hopeless romantic instantly imagined she was his newlywed wife, fixing his tie before he went to work.
Nice.
If the gym caretaker hadn't shown up with the key, Taiki probably would have proposed on the spot. Then Chinatsu called him by his name. Taiki nearly had a heart attack before realizing she had simply read the name tag his mother had sewn onto his scarf. He immediately felt embarrassed. Later that day, Taiki walked back to the gym and saw Chinatsu talking with her coach. He couldn't help but wonder what they were discussing. Hours later, as everyone was getting ready to go home, Taiki realized he had forgotten his towel in the gym. When he went back to get it, he was surprised to find Chinatsu still practicing by herself. She explained that she hadn't performed well during practice, so she wanted to keep training. She also remembered his name, which made Taiki ridiculously happy. Feeling brave, he asked if she wanted to play a one-on-one game. Chinatsu agreed, but Taiki couldn't keep up with her at all. Before long, he was breathing like he'd just run a marathon. Seeing that, Chinatsu suggested they take a break. While resting, they chatted and discovered that both of their mothers had played basketball when they were younger. Both moms had taught their children how to play, but Taiki wasn't really made for team sports, so he chose badminton instead. Taiki pointed out that nobody trained harder than Chinatsu. He even remembered seeing her practicing on the day of her middle school graduation. He had gone to school that day to pick up some of his things and happened to see her in the gym. The surprising part was that she was crying. A few days later, he learned it was because she had missed the chance to compete at the national tournament. At that moment, Taiki realized just how strong and dedicated Chinatsu really was, and he decided he wanted to become someone like her. Chinatsu stayed quiet for a moment before admitting that she had almost forgotten about that incident. Before Taiki could say anything else, the gym caretaker came over and told them it was time to clean up and leave. Taiki stood up to help Chinatsu tidy the gym, and while doing so, they shared a slightly romantic moment after chasing a runaway basketball. A few days later, Taiki went into the kitchen to grab lunch and noticed that his mom had left a sports magazine open to an article about Chinatsu. When she caught him reading it, she revealed that she used to be teammates with Chinatsu's mother. She also mentioned that the Chinatsu family would soon be moving overseas. Shocked by the news, Taiki sprinted all the way to school. When he found Chinatsu in the gym, he gave her a passionate speech, telling her not to give up on her dream of reaching the national tournament. But when he brought up her family's move overseas, Chinatsu stopped him and explained that only her family was leaving. She would be staying in Japan and living with one of her mother's friends. Taiki was so embarrassed that he immediately tried to run away, but Chinatsu stopped him. She admitted that being away from her family would be difficult, but she was willing to endure it to chase her dream. To Taiki's surprise, she revealed that his words had inspired her to make that decision. Poor guy had absolutely no idea how to respond. Before leaving, Chinatsu tossed him a basketball and said she'd love to play against him someday. Taiki smiled and told her he'd teach her how to play badminton instead. That weekend, Taiki woke up cringing as he replayed every awkward moment he'd had with Chinatsu. At least, he thought, he wouldn't have to see her that day and could finally recover from the embarrassment. Yeah, about that. When he walked into the kitchen, he was shocked to find Chinatsu standing there. A moment later, their mothers came in and explained that, as a favor to Chinatsu's mother, Chinatsu would be moving into their house. Taiki's brain completely stopped working. Even after his whole family officially welcomed her, he still couldn't process what was happening. He went back to his room and started wondering how he was supposed to survive the next 2 years living with the girl he had a crush on. Just then, Chinatsu knocked on his door. Panicking, Taiki quickly pretended to read a manga. Chinatsu walked over and said she'd been wanting to read that exact volume for a long time. Taiki immediately handed it to her. Instead of leaving, Chinatsu kept looking at him and said she was glad she would be living with someone she already knew because he was a familiar face. As usual, Taiki's brain shut down, so he just stared at her. The second she left the room, the embarrassment hit him like a truck. The next day during practice, Kyo noticed that Taiki was much more energetic than usual. Taiki admitted it was because he was unbelievably happy about living under the same roof as Chinatsu. Kyo congratulated him but warned him never to let anyone else find out. If the army of Chinatsu fans learned the truth, Taiki would probably disappear under very mysterious circumstances. That thought terrified Taiki, until Kyo joked that now he could finally make Chinatsu his girlfriend. Taiki quickly shut that idea down. He explained that dating was the last thing on his mind. Chinatsu needed to focus on basketball and reach the national tournament. He also wanted to become someone worthy of standing beside her. The best way to do that, in his mind, was to qualify for nationals himself. Kyo pointed out that Taiki was aiming way too high since his current skills weren't even close, but Taiki believed he could do it. That night, after doing extra workouts, Taiki watched recordings of his practice and carefully studied his mistakes to improve. Just then, Chinatsu walked into the room. Startled, Taiki quickly moved aside and explained that he was reviewing his matches. Interested, Chinatsu asked if she could watch. She even mentioned that she often watched him practice. Hearing that made Taiki's heart do backflips, but somehow he managed to keep a straight face. As she watched the video, Chinatsu complimented his skills. Taiki disagreed and pointed out all the things he still needed to improve. He got so carried away talking that he accidentally revealed his goal of reaching nationals. The moment those words left his mouth, he regretted everything. He had wanted to keep it a secret until he became stronger, but now there was no taking it back. Chinatsu smiled and told him he had to keep his promise. She stepped away for a moment and came back with the handmade good luck bracelet. She gave it to Taiki. He happily accepted it and tried tying it around his ankle. Unfortunately, he tied it so tightly that he was basically cutting off his own blood circulation. Chinatsu couldn't watch that disaster any longer, so she gently tied it properly for him. She also showed him the matching bracelet she was wearing herself. After she left, Taiki promised himself he would train even harder. He also prayed that he wouldn't become too distracted by how much he liked her. The following morning, Taiki left home earlier than usual. His childhood friend Hina found him doing crunches in the gym and immediately asked if he was trying to get ripped for Chinatsu. Taiki completely lost focus, slammed his face into his own knee and rolled around the floor in pain. Once he recovered, he quietly tried to escape. Unfortunately, Hina specialized in being extremely nosy. She followed him everywhere, demanding answers. Taiki refused to tell her anything because if Hina discovered Chinatsu was living with him, she'd spread the news faster than the internet and his life would be over. Right then, they ran into Chinatsu at the school entrance. She had come to return Taiki's wallet. Taiki instantly panicked. Chinatsu quickly realized he didn't want anyone to know they lived together, so she simply handed him the wallet without saying anything and walked away. But Taiki could tell she wasn't happy. When he turned back around, he found Hina giving him a suspicious, "I'm watching you" look. At lunchtime, Taiki talked to Kyo about Chinatsu's strange attitude. Kyo immediately understood the problem. He explained that Taiki should have talked to Chinatsu beforehand about keeping their living situation secret. Instead, he had suddenly acted distant in front of everyone, making it seem like he wanted nothing to do with her. The moment Taiki realized his mistake, he started panicking all over again. Just then, a teacher asked them to help move some chairs. By coincidence, Hina and Chinatsu arrived, so the teacher asked them to help too. When Taiki noticed Chinatsu struggling with the chairs, he offered to carry some for her. She politely but coldly refused and walked away. Feeling bad for him, Hina decided to play Cupid. As they walked together, she started asking Chinatsu all kinds of questions about her love life. Chinatsu simply replied that she didn't have one because basketball was her top priority. Hearing that somehow made Hina feel even sorrier for Taiki. After they finished moving the chairs, another teacher stopped Taiki. The teacher praised him and mentioned that his coach had been speaking very highly of him. He even said everyone expected Taiki to perform well in the upcoming national preliminaries. Taiki was thrilled. He immediately turned around hoping to see Chinatsu's reaction, but she had already walked away. Later during practice, Taiki put all his frustration into his smashes. Then he noticed Chinatsu trip and fall. The moment he saw that, all his anger disappeared. Kyo told him to stop standing around looking like a lost puppy and just go talk to her. So he did. When Taiki found Chinatsu alone, she looked surprised. It turned out she had completely misunderstood the situation. She thought Taiki wanted them to act like strangers because he had a crush on Hina and didn't want Hina to get the wrong idea. Taiki went from shocked to laughing. Seeing him laugh, Chinatsu pouted and complained that he was being mean. At that exact moment, Hina walked past and saw the two of them together. She didn't interrupt. She just stood there silently, watching. A few days later, the badminton coach reminded everyone that the national preliminaries were getting closer. Before that, the team would have interdepartmental matches in 1 week. Kyo reminded Taiki that unless he could beat Haru, he had no chance of making it to nationals. Taiki confidently told him not to underestimate him. That evening, while walking home, Taiki ran into Hina. She explained that she was was going to visit a new chiropractor whose clinic happened to be near Taiki's house. Not wanting her to accidentally discover that Chinatsu lived there too, Taiki quickly offered to walk with her. On the way, Hina stopped to pet a dog. A little later, she started drooling over some taiyaki because she was on a strict diet. Taiki admired her determination and gave her a long speech about how dedicated she was and how that made her a true athlete. Hina couldn't help teasing him again. As they continued walking, Hina kept chatting nonstop. Then she suddenly noticed something ahead and froze. Taiki felt that something was wrong, and he got his answer when he turned around and saw Chinatsu walking home with Haru while laughing together. Hina quickly tried to calm him down. She said they could just be friends and pointed out that there was nothing strange about a boy and a girl walking home together. After all, she and Taiki were doing the exact same thing. Taiki wasn't convinced at all, but pretending they were just friends was the only way to protect his sanity, so he forced himself to believe it and walked home with Hina. The next day, he saw Chinatsu and Haru together again. This time, his heart took another critical hit. Hina made things even worse by casually mentioning that Chinatsu and Haru were almost always together because they sat next to each other in class. Poor Taiki instantly fell into depression mode. Trying to cheer him up, Hina reminded him that Chinatsu had already said she wasn't interested in having a boyfriend. Taiki pointed out that not wanting a boyfriend didn't mean she couldn't have feelings for someone. His friends couldn't argue with that. Later, during practice, a basketball rolled toward Taiki. He picked it up and handed it back to Chinatsu, trying his best not to make eye contact because he was still feeling miserable. But Chinatsu stopped him before he could leave. She asked what time his badminton practice would end. Apparently, she had forgotten her house keys, and Taiki's parents had gone out for the evening, so he was her only way of getting into the house. Taiki told her his practice would finish at 7 p.m. Before they could make a plan, Haru called out to Chinatsu. What hurt Taiki the most wasn't that Haru called her, it was that he called her Chi. That nickname made it obvious they were comfortable enough to use casual names with each other. Completely overwhelmed by jealousy, Taiki ended up running all the way home that evening. On the way, he even bumped into one of Chinatsu and Haru's classmates. By the time he reached home, he had no energy left. He collapsed on the floor near the entrance and started going through every stage of heartbreak. A little later, Chinatsu came home. Taiki immediately sat up and bowed his head to hide how miserable he looked. Curious, Chinatsu sat beside him and asked if he had run all the way home because he was worried about leaving her waiting. She knew badminton practice usually lasted much longer. Taiki was shocked that she had figured out he'd been running. Not wanting to admit the real reason, he lied and said he was simply getting in some extra exercise. To make the lie more believable, he immediately stood up and announced that he was going for another run because he still had plenty of energy left. As he ran outside, he gradually calmed himself down. He reminded himself not to overthink something that might not even be true. The next day after practice, Taiki and Kyo checked the match results. Kyo noticed that Taiki hadn't lost a single game. Taiki brushed it off, saying he had only been playing against weaker opponents. Then he pointed at Haru's results. Haru had also won every single one of his matches. Even they had to admit the guy was incredibly good. As they walked outside, Kyo asked if there had been any progress with Chinatsu and Haru. Taiki insisted that he didn't care what kind of relationship they had anymore and wouldn't let it bother him. Kyo took that as Taiki giving up. Before Taiki could deny it, they spotted Chinatsu talking with Haru and two other classmates. One of the boys was praising Kyo's badminton skills. Kyo humbly insisted it wasn't a big deal. Chinatsu wished Kyo good luck before leaving with another girl. The moment they were out of earshot, the other boys started teasing Haru about Chinatsu. Haru immediately denied that anything was going on between them, but he casually admitted that he liked girls who worked hard. Hearing that made Taiki even more convinced that Haru was his love rival. That realization changed everything. Later, Taiki faced Haru in a one-on-one badminton match. As expected, Haru controlled the pace from the very beginning. No matter how hard Taiki tried, he couldn't keep up. Kyo and Hina watched from the sidelines along with everyone else. Hina worried about Taiki. Kyo, on the other hand, believed he was doing better than he looked. He then glanced toward the basketball court and noticed Chinatsu was watching the match just as seriously as everyone else. When the first game ended, Kyo brought Taiki some water. To his surprise, Taiki didn't seem discouraged at all. He explained that love and sports were completely different. He wasn't trying to beat Haru because of Chinatsu, he simply wanted to prove that he was a good badminton player. Just then, Haru called him back onto the court. As Taiki bent down to tie his shoes, he noticed the good luck bracelet Chinatsu had given him. Seeing it filled him with determination. This time he kept up with Haru much better and stopped the match from being completely one-sided. Sadly, he still lost. Taiki felt frustrated because he realized just how much he still had to improve. Nearby, Haru and one of his friends overheard Taiki talking to Kyo. Surprisingly, Haru admitted that he was frustrated too. His friend couldn't understand why. After all, Haru had won the match, but Haru refused to explain. A little while later, as Taiki was walking home, he kept replaying the match over and over in his head. Suddenly, Chinatsu ran up to him and asked him to come with her. She led him to a nearby park and pulled out 2 badminton rackets. She reminded Taiki that he had promised to teach her how to play. He couldn't believe she actually remembered. Happy about it, he started teaching her the basics after realizing she was absolutely terrible at serving. As they practiced together, Chinatsu mentioned that she had watched his match against Haru. Taiki begged her not to bring it up because he was embarrassed that he had lost. Chinatsu smiled and told him there was nothing to be embarrassed about. She said he had improved a lot during the second half of the match. Taiki still complained about all the shots he had missed because he wasn't fast enough or strong enough. That made Chinatsu laugh. She called him a sore loser. Even so, she praised him, saying she had seen how hard he worked and believed he would definitely become stronger. Taiki didn't know what to say. He had always struggled to believe in himself, but hearing Chinatsu believe in him made him start believing too. After they finished playing, Chinatsu went to collect her things. Taiki noticed a keychain with the name Chi on it. His heart immediately sank because he assumed Haru had given it to her. Luckily, Chinatsu explained that it was a gift from her classmates since everyone called her Chi. Taiki instantly relaxed. Even so, he told Chinatsu to go home ahead of him, awkwardly claiming that he felt embarrassed walking home with a girl. Later that week, Taiki was shocked to find out that he had been paired with Haru for the upcoming interdepartmental doubles match. While complaining to Kyo about having to team up with his so-called love rival, Haru suddenly walked over and invited him to a practice match. Taiki silently prayed that Haru hadn't overheard what he said. No such luck. Haru immediately teased him about having a crush on Chinatsu. Once practice started, Haru trained Taiki like a strict military instructor. Whenever Taiki got tired, Haru would casually bring up Chinatsu. The comments felt more like personal attacks than motivation, but somehow they pushed Taiki to keep going. By the end of the week, Taiki looked like he'd survived a zombie apocalypse. Hina guessed that Haru was pushing him so hard because of Chinatsu. Taiki didn't think that was the reason. Instead, he started listing all the areas where Haru was still better than him. His friends could only conclude that Taiki was somehow addicted to suffering. After school, Taiki dramatically walked around with a cane, acting like practice had completely destroyed him. The second he spotted Haru and Chinatsu talking with some classmates, though, he magically stood up straight. Haru called him over and introduced him as his doubles partner. He then started listing all of Taiki's weaknesses in front of everyone. Just as Taiki was dying of embarrassment, Haru suddenly switched gears and started praising him. He said Taiki never gave up and never let his teasing or harsh comments get to him. Their friends immediately called Haru out for bullying Taiki. Haru simply shrugged and admitted that he only pushed people that he believed had real potential. When Taiki looked over, Chinatsu quietly whispered that he was doing a great job. Those few words instantly lifted his spirits. Then Haru pulled out his phone and casually mentioned that he'd just gotten a message from his girlfriend. Taiki nearly stopped functioning. Haru explained that they had only recently started dating, and even though he had liked her for a long time. It turned out that the day Taiki had seen Haru and Chinatsu together, Chinatsu had only been helping him shop for a present for his girlfriend. As Taiki struggled to process this life-changing information, Haru looked him straight in the eyes and joked that it would probably be a very long time before Taiki got a girlfriend. That was the moment Taiki realized Haru had been messing with him the entire time, just because he thought it was funny. A few days later, Taiki accidentally grabbed Chinatsu's gym clothes before leaving for school. He didn't realize his mistake until she texted him, asking him to bring them to the AV room. Naturally, Taiki panicked and rushed over. On the way, he bumped into Haru. Haru immediately noticed Taiki was acting suspiciously and invited him to another practice session. Taiki quickly turned him down and promised he'd train twice as hard later that evening before making a run for it. When he reached the AV room, the rhythmic gymnastics team was already using it. Hina noticed him standing there and asked if he needed something. Taiki completely froze. As he awkwardly tried to leave, he bumped into someone and dropped Chinatsu's gym clothes onto the floor. Hina bent down to pick them up. Taiki practically screamed at her not to touch them. That instantly made Hina suspicious. As she started teasing him, Taiki desperately tried to cover things up. He claimed the clothes hadn't been washed in weeks. Hina immediately backed away in disgust. Then she remembered that Taiki wore his own gym clothes almost every day, which made his excuse sound completely fake. Running out of ideas, Taiki claimed the clothes hadn't been washed since the previous school term. Hina took another giant step backward with an even more horrified look. After finally grabbing the clothes himself, Taiki wandered through the halls wondering what to do. Then Chinatsu texted him again and asked him to meet her on the rooftop. Students normally weren't allowed there, but she'd borrowed the key from someone in the astronomy club. After Taiki handed her the bag, the school bell rang, signaling the start of the next class. Instead of leaving, Chinatsu immediately started changing into her gym clothes. Taiki completely froze. Apparently, the girls on the basketball team were so used to changing quickly, they could do it almost anywhere. Not wanting to make things awkward, Taiki offered to stand guard outside the door. Even then, he struggled to stop his imagination from running wild. Thankfully, Chinatsu finished changing before his thoughts got too out of control. Taiki told her to head to class first, while he stayed behind for a moment to calm himself down. That evening, just before heading home, Hina wished Taiki good luck for his match. Haru overheard and jokingly asked if the two of them were dating. Taiki immediately denied it and said they were completely platonic friends. Haru accepted the answer and reminded him not to get too nervous before the match. He joked that the doubles victory was basically guaranteed because Haru was there. The real challenge would be the singles matches. Taiki confidently told Haru not to underestimate his sharp instincts. Haru laughed and pointed out that despite those sharp instincts, Taiki had forgotten his racket bag. Realizing he was right, Taiki sprinted back to get it while Haru watched him with a smile. Later that night, Taiki stood at the dinner table drinking water while his mother rushed around making sure everything was ready for the tournament. He told her to relax because he had already packed everything. His mother ignored him and kept fussing over him anyway. Then Taiki accidentally spilled water all over his freshly washed gym clothes. His mother nearly lost her mind. After escaping to his room, Taiki found himself too nervous to relax, so he went outside to do some extra practice. A few minutes later, Chinatsu found him training in the yard. The first thing she noticed was that he was wearing his shirt inside out. Without thinking, Taiki pulled his shirt off to fix it. Chinatsu immediately became flustered and quickly looked away. Once he had fixed his shirt, Chinatsu complimented him, saying all his hard work was starting to show. Taiki replied that he'd only gained muscles. His badminton skills still weren't good enough. Hearing that, Chinatsu stepped closer and gently tapped him on the forehead. Confused, Taiki asked why she had done that. She explained that it was supposed to help him relax. Chinatsu told him to stop overthinking everything. She reminded him that even if he failed this year, he still had 2 more years to keep trying. Taiki suddenly froze. By then, Chinatsu would have already graduated. She wouldn't be around to see him achieve his dream. So, he quietly told her that he didn't want to wait another few years before reaching his goal. Then, he walked away. Chinatsu was left feeling guilty, while Taiki didn't even realize how his words had affected her. Now it's time to wrap up the story. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Till then, peace out.